Yo, what's going on, PC gamers? Welcome to a $700 gaming PC build. Let's get right into this with the CPU of the build. I went with the AMD FX 8350 4.0 GHz 8-core processor. Now, this CPU, in my opinion, is one of the best all-around CPUs you can get for the price right now. $140 for this CPU is just a killer deal. This works really well in video editing and gaming as well. Yes, a lot of games don't take advantage of the 8 cores that are present in the FX 8350, but you're seeing it more and more with games recommending 6-core and even some games recommending 8-core AMD CPUs. It's definitely a thing where game developers are slowly but surely starting to utilize more and more cores out of the FX 6300 and the 8350 that we have in this build. This works really well in gaming, but video editing, this thing's an absolute monster for the price. You're going to be able to do a lot of video editing, live streaming, and multi-threaded applications, no problem. Like I said, for $140, this is a really good all-around CPU. The only problem is it does run a little hot, so if you want to pick up, a cheap CPU cooler like a Hyper 212 Evo, that's probably recommended. You don't have to, but it's something nice to have. For the motherboard, I went with the Gigabyte GA990 FXA-UD3 ATX AM3 Plus motherboard, a full-size motherboard. This motherboard's loaded for the price of $113. You can go for a Crossfire SLI configuration, up to 32 gigabytes of RAM, 4 RAM slots, SATA 6, USB 3, all that kind of good stuff. And Gigabyte typically makes very good motherboards, and their AMD boards in particular are very good, so I highly recommend this motherboard. Like I said, it's just loaded with features. 4 RAM slots, so you got upgradability options as far as the RAM goes, and it supports up to 2000 megahertz RAM, which is pretty good, and 32 gigs total. SATA 6 ports of that, so that's really good. Just a loaded motherboard for a relatively cheap price of $113. For the memory, I went with G.Skill Aries Series 8GB, two 4GB sticks running at 1600 MHz. $55 for 8 gigs of RAM, really solid price in my opinion. 8 gigs of RAM is perfectly fine for gaming and even things like video editing and rendering. A lot of games don't even utilize the full 8 gigabytes, so when I see people always wanting 16 or 32 gigabytes of RAM in their machine, I'm just like, what are you doing? 8 gigabytes of RAM is perfectly fine, and like I said, the motherboard has 4 RAM slots, so say 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the line, you want to go for a 16 gigabyte configuration, that option is open to you. All you'll have to do is buy another kit of this RAM and then boom, you're good to go. You got 16 gigs of RAM in your machine. But right now in a budget build, it just doesn't make logical sense. But $55 for 8 gigs of RAM is definitely a good value in my opinion. For storage, I went with the Western Digital Caviar Blue 1TB 3.5-inch 7200 RPM hard drive. No SSD on this build. Of course, you can get this for about $50. A very good hard drive. It's a terabyte of space. If you do have the extra cash, I would recommend getting a 2 or 3 terabyte drive, as those are pretty cheap, but if not, it seems like a terabyte is good for most people, and, not much more to say. It's a terabyte, it's the Caviar Blue, they seem to work pretty well. I have one myself and have had no problems with it, so yeah, I think you're going to like this a lot. For the video card, Sapphire Radeon R9 290, the non-X edition, 4GB Tri-X video card. About $250 for this video card after a mail-in rebate. Really solid price for a R9 290. This thing's an absolute monster at 1080p. And even if you do crank it, your games up to 1440p, it's got 4 gigabytes of video buffer. So a lot of games in 1440p, you're going to be able to play pretty smoothly as well. But in 1080p, this thing's an absolute killer. The power consumption on this GPU isn't the best, but for a GPU that's $250 and you're getting the kind of performance that you're getting out of this GPU, I think that's a sacrifice you can make. That's not too big of a deal anyway. This GPU is an absolute monster for the price. For the power supply, I went with the EVGA 600 watt 80 plus bronze certified power supply. $45 for this power supply, just a really solid power supply. 600 watts is going to power this build no problem. Yes, the FX 8350 is higher on the wattage side for a CPU, and the R9 290 isn't extremely power efficient either, but 600 watts is going to be more than enough. One warning is that you're not going to be able to go for a Crossfire configuration with this power supply. That's something I'm not a big fan of anyway, so yeah. If you're the kind of person that does want to go for a Crossfire configuration in the future, you might want to pick up a TX750, TX850, a 750, 850 watt power supply. Otherwise, this 600 watt power supply is definitely going to do the job. Finally, for the case, I went with the Corsair $200 ATX mid-tower case, $50 for a solid mid-tower case. Not much to say about this case, pretty basic on the exterior, but in the interior it gets the job done. And for the low price of $50, I think this was a solid addition in the build. Thanks for watching this video, guys. Remember to hit that subscribe button, like this video, comment down below for future videos and requests that you guys have. I'm always open to new suggestions. Thanks for watching this video, guys, and I'll talk to y'all later. Peace!